Hi, my name is Jessica Evans, and I'm currently the lead teacher in Junior B at O2B Kids Palm Harbor, as well as the education champion. Today we're going to do a presentation on lesson execution and concept development. So for today's agenda, we're going to go over creating a lesson plan, executing a lesson plan, and concept development. So let's just go ahead and jump right into how to create an engaging lesson. The first thing you need to know when you are doing any kind of lesson planning is you need to know where the children are developmentally. You can do this through observations and assessments, either formal or informal. You can use the observation tools that we have as our school and just informal observation of seeing where the children are developmentally. It is really good to use the Florida State Standards for early childhood to understand better where the children are. The website for the Early Learning Standards is very comprehensive and very easy to use. You can just click on the age group you want, the domain you want, and it covers all the domains for all age groups. It's also important to determine the objective. That is, what do you want the kids to learn during that lesson? Is it going to be a math lesson, a science? And it's also important to know to make sure your objective matches the standard that you're trying to teach. Pinterest and Funny Dapper both offer great ideas on how to incorporate into the lesson, and including the standards as well. Lesson execution. So after you've designed your lesson plan and you're ready to sit down with the children and do it, it's important to remember some of these tips so that you can make sure that the children are getting the most out of the teaching time that you're doing. When you're executing a lesson, it is important to be engaged and excited about what you are teaching. If you are not excited, don't expect them to be excited. If you go in with a very, okay, here's what we're doing attitude, they're going to be bored and you will lose complete focus and interest on what they're doing. If you go in there and you're, oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to see what we're going to do today, they're going to be all amped up to join in the fun. Creating activities that the children can participate in. If the children are interacting, they're more focused and they're more likely to be engaged in what they're learning, which will give them more of the learning time, will be more beneficial. The lesson should include a back and forth exchange between the teacher and the children, as well as between the children. Language development is a big part of the class assessment, and it's one of the biggest dimensions in the class assessment. The language you use during circle time, during center time, those are all being observed, and it's important to expand the children's language through that back and forth exchange. Using real life experiences to spark children's interests. Anytime you can connect a real life experience to what you're teaching, it's going to make it more meaningful to the children. And also, again, goes back to the class dimensions, real life activities being extended to what we're learning in the classroom. When conducting small group activities, pair up children with children who are challenged, with children who are doing exceptionally well in that developmental milestone. It helps to give the peer teaching because it not only benefits what you're trying to teach during that small group, but it also benefits their social skills. And avoid lecturing to the children. You can tell them and rote count and point letters, but if there's no connection to what they're learning, they're not going to understand. So let's jump into some examples of some engaging lessons. These are some lessons that we've done in my classroom recently. This was an activity that we did this week for it was a hide and seek chicken game. So on each chicken there was a number, and I had a little paper egg that I hid behind the chickens, and the children had to guess what number the chicken was hiding, or the egg was hiding behind, by identifying the number. And they got so excited about trying to find the chicken and playing the detective, but they were also learning to identify the numbers, which is a math concept. For this activity, this was our rhyming cow activity. I laid the grass, that was the pictures of the grass on the ground, and the children had to pick a piece of grass to feed to the cow. Well, the cow was picky and would only eat words that rhymed. So if they picked up cat and bat, they could feed it to the cow. But if they picked up cat and ball, they obviously realized that wasn't a rhyming word. This goes back to the language and literacy section of the standards, and this kind of touches on that concept as well. Connecting real life experiences to learning. So this was an activity we did to focus on hand washing skills. We started off with a science experiment where we showed how the germs, this case pepper, ran away from the soap by dipping a Q-tip into Dawn soap and then placing it on top of the water, and the pepper germs scattered. So then we went over why it was important to wash our hands. We did our glitter germs activity where I had glitter on my hands and I would touch the children to show them how germs are transferred. Then we also went over our hand washing song. All right, now we're going to move on to concept development. Concept development is when you found the standard that you want to work on. That's the concept that you're going to be working on with the children. And you want to be able to develop their skills and their understanding of that concept. Concept development is defined by the class assessment as the dimension which measures teachers' use of instructional activities to promote children's higher order thinking and cognitive skills. Higher order thinking refers to their problem solving skills. How can you make them understand how something works, how they get to the solution to the problem? This is done through open-ended questions and extending vocabulary. Again, back to the class assessment, it's a very big thing for them and on the class assessment to extend the language. Keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. Use those big words. If a child can understand what a brontosaurus is, they can also understand the bigger words that you might use to extend the language and give them different words. In my classroom this week, we started talking about stabilization and angles and ramps and things like that. And by the end of the week, they were explaining to me how they stabilized the materials they were using and what boundaries they put on them. So it's once you start using them, they start using them in the same context. When teaching concepts, it is important to understand where the child is developmentally so you can scaffold their learning to the next developmental level. So when you're teaching the children, it is important that you're able to not only keep them where they are, but you need to bring them to the next level. So when you're working on one-to-one correspondence, you want to move them from that to recognizing the numbers, to adding, to subtracting, to parts and whole. Those are very important parts of all of the children's development. Concept development doesn't have to be restricted to during small group time and large group time. It can be done any time throughout the day. Transition time, lunchtime, snack time. Having children reflect on the day's activities they did and the concepts they learned during center time is a great way to reinforce the concepts learned. What we do in our classroom is we have our post-play, which is our reflection time, to go over what we had done during that time and show the other children and discuss what we created maybe in the block center, how we played in dramatic play. So let's jump into some of the examples. This is our learning through the senses activity that we did in our classroom last month. As you can see, Madison right here, she's definitely tasting a lemon. So what we did was I cut up some lemons and I cut up some oranges, and I gave each of them a piece of lemon or a piece of orange to try. And we tasted it. I had them describe it to me. I heard the words sour, spicy, sweet. And then we also graphed which one they liked the best, if they liked the lemons, the oranges, or both. The oranges definitely got the most votes at 9. Hands-on learning can also be done independently as well as in small group or with a peer. As you see, these girls here are working on a math activity. They're also using their fine motor skills by using the pincers to pick up the pom-poms and match the numbers on the cards. Ava over here has actually gone to a seriation activity, which is by grouping by size. So she started with the smallest purple pom-poms and put them up to the tallest. Over here we actually have a literacy activity where we're sorting upper and lowercase letters. And over here is another math activity with some apple trees. Here's some pictures of taking advantage of the teachable moments throughout the day. During our lunchtime and snack time, our kids each have a job. One of the jobs is to pass out the napkins for lunch. We count the children. The lunch counter will count how many kids we have, and then they will also count as they're putting out the napkins. That reinforces that one-to-one correspondence concept. And as I said before, transitions are a great way to do teachable moments as well. You can have music and we can call kids by the letter of their name and things like that. Reflecting on what we have learned. So for here you can see that we're using the tablet to actually reflect on what we have learned throughout the day. During this exchange, we had been working really hard this week on, like I said, stabilization and building ramps. So Dominic was showing some of the children on the tablet the creation that he had made during that time in centers and how he had built the ramps using the boundaries and the barricades and how it didn't collapse, all the words and the language that we had used, again, reinforcing the concepts. And here Freddie is actually showing us how he drew a sketch of the bridge he built and how it has all of the stabilizers underneath to keep the bridge up. Here's a list of some general open-ended questions. Open-ended questions spark the creativity, they spark the problem solving, and they spark the critical thinking skills of the children. How are you going to stabilize that ramp? How are you going to make that so it doesn't fall over? And all of these questions can be asked in context to whatever you're doing. All right, next we're going to do a little experiment. This is to kind of reinforce why real life experiences are more valuable to learning than worksheets. So here I have some coloring sheets for you guys to use. I want you to color an apple. So I'm going to hand you these. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to color your apple, and then we'll talk about it and you can describe it to me. All right, so now that you guys have colored your apples, we can start with Raquel. Why don't you describe your apple? Tell us about your apple.
Well, my apple's kind of lightly colored. It's got shades of pink, yellow, and green with a golden stem.
What does it taste like?
I don't want to taste it.
What does it smell like?
Nothing I can identify.
Okay, Serena, what about you? Can you tell us about your apple?
Yeah, I did my apple like a rainbow apple because I like rainbow colors. And I did it with all different like slants because I didn't want it to be straight.
Okay, and Marcia, tell us about your apple.
Well, I also like rainbow apples. So I kind of like the lighter colors and purples and pinks and yellows. And there is no smell.
Can you taste
paper.
it?
No.
Okay. Well, we're going to go on to the next part of our activity where I'm going to give each of you an apple and a knife, and I'm going to remind you when you're doing this with children, do not let them use these knives. These are for teachers only. So I'm going to give you each an apple and a plate.
Thank you.
And I want you to cut your apples in half, in quarters, however you want. What sound did that make when you cut into it,
It's
Serena?
like a crunch sound.
Mm.
And I found a star in my apple.
Me too.
You can paint with this, and then it'll make like a print, like a star.
A flower.
I don't have a
Yeah.
star.
Because you cut it.
If you cut it a different way, you don't get a star.
But what does it
Oh,
smell like?
Ah.
Apple.
Yeah.
Is it-
Slightly sweet.
What is
Can we eat it?
Yeah, what does it feel like?
It's smooth on the outside and a little greenier on the inside.
Yeah.
What does it taste like?
It's sweet, and it kind of makes a crispy sound.
It's crunchy.
Yeah, crunchy.
Crunchy. It's got kind of a grain to it.
Kind of got two different tastes and texture.
Between the skin and the meat of it.
Yeah.
And was there juice inside when you cut into it?
Yeah, it's juicy.
Now the point of this activity, as much fun as it is to color apples and then get to have a snack, is to make you understand that real life objects and real life experiences carry more weight than a piece of paper could ever have for understanding for children's learning. Which activity would you say you got the most out of?
The physical one.
Marsha?
Absolutely.
Serena?
Actually touching
Yeah,
it.
touching the apple and feeling
Describing
it.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna wrap up. So I've also included in your PowerPoint some helpful resources. This is the website for the Florida Early Learning Standards that we talked about earlier. So this will be where you can go to view the benchmarks and the concepts that the children need to be working on, and gives you great ideas and resources on how to implement the standards in your classrooms. The class resources website, it's got wonderful ideas on how to increase your concept development, language expansion, everything that is involved with the class dimensions. And also, of course, the Funny Dapper website for lesson planning within the classroom. There's ideas on there. There's also a list of the standards for Florida as well. I want to thank you all for being a part of our presentation today. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a lot. And we will see you next time. Thanks.